Okay, so I should explain, for one thing, the subtitle maybe. Okay, so as I don't know, maybe most of you know. Anyway, I am not a roboticist. I've never been involved at all, I think, in any robotics project. Okay, despite having been in AI for 40 years. That's okay, because really, I'm going to be talking about autonomous systems, which needn't be robots, right? They can be purely digital or whatever. So my ignorance of robotics, frankly, doesn't really matter so much. Now, about ethics. So again, as I don't know, some of you, I'm not sure how many know, my PhD, actually my BA for that matter, and my PhD are both in philosophy. So I was a philosophy major for 4 years, well, you know, kind of 4 years, 3+ years. In college, I then did, so I'm going to count that as 4, because I like the math, the way the math works out, that's all. It's the only reason, actually. I was a graduate student of philosophy for 5 years. It's 9. I then taught philosophy in surprisingly accredited institutions of higher learning for 9 years. So that's, you know, anyway, it's a bunch of years. During all that time, I avoided successfully ever taking a course in ethics. So I've taken no courses in ethics. And my students, I mean, I did actually have students for 9 years. And then I taught, I should note, I taught a few graduate seminars at Stanford. I'm not counting those, but I actually did. Anyway, even those. I never taught a course in ethics as they would, for which they were eternally grateful, no doubt. Okay, so I picked up a little bit, you know, I mean, I used to hang around philosophy department water coolers, right? Because, you know, so I picked up some stuff, but I'm an amateur. I mean, really, I'm not kidding. I am an amateur at ethics. Hmm?
He's asking about Compleat with an E.
Oh, no, that's an old-fashioned, I just did that. So there's a famous, yeah, the Compleat angler from the 17th century. That's like 17th century. That's all. It's not a mistaken spelling. It's a purposeful old spelling by a purposefully old person. Anyway, so one of the things, in a way, that I'm going to be arguing for, kind of, not directly, I guess, but anyway, is that my ignorance of ethics doesn't matter either. Okay, so neither my ignorance of robotics nor my ignorance of ethics really are going to matter, I think.
It may even be an advantage.
Oh, no, I'm not making that claim. Although that's a claim. I'm actually not making that claim. Okay, so this is something I can't remember ever doing this, to be perfectly honest, in a talk before. I'm going to tell you what the goals of the talk are. I mean, not the final lessons, I mean, you know, literally the goals of the talk. And they are 2 in number. And the most important by far is to get people, especially, frankly, people in AI, computer science, if you like, as well, to think about some of the issues I'm going to raise, because I think they're like important issues for people in the profession to think about. They're also important for people outside the profession to think about, but okay? So I think it's important. I want to make it absolutely clear that I am not claiming to be a pioneer in this at all. Right, so I'm going to stick up that URL one more time in the talk. So I think it was 100, actually, I think it was 100 of, in some broad sense, my colleagues in AI wrote an open letter, that's what that's a link to, about autonomous weapon systems in particular. And they've petitioned the UN, a specific committee, I'm not actually sure what, to be honest, I'll say committee, of the UN to kind of hold hearings and to come up, something. So they're aiming at something, an analog of the Geneva Conventions. That's kind of what they have in mind, that the UN should publish, as it were, make public, get votes and all that stuff. Something like a convention governing, regulating the use of autonomous systems in warfare, in war. Okay? So I'm not like the Paul Revere of this. I think of myself more like as the little old man with the shovel and the broom who followed the horse. And anyway, that's kind of my opinion. So that's one issue. And the other issue, I do have a kind of way of thinking about this stuff. And I just want to tell you what that way is. So that is the second goal. This is not a worked out, never mind, well worked out technical approach. This talk is devoid of technical stuff. There is technical stuff in the background, and I can talk about it if it comes up, I don't know. And every once in a while, I'll point in a certain technical direction, but this is not a technical talk. All right, okay, so you could all leave, all right. Okay, now, so this is the talk proper, you might say, finally starting. So as I assume many in this room know, there's been it's kind of died down because of as I put it earlier to some of my colleagues, the maelstrom of fecal matter that comes from Washington continuously over the last 10 months or so. But there wasn't a big buzz about, kind of the Terminator, and I don't mean Arnold Schwarzenegger. About robots taking over and killing us all or something, right? There was a big buzz about that starting earlier this decade. Okay, and there's the big issue in certain people's minds, where the rise of super intelligent artificial agents, perhaps with interests of their own, which interests might conflict with our interests. Okay, so this is not. So they wrote these characters, including these are very smart people, some of whom didn't know much about AI, like, for instance, Stephen Hawking, but that's, he's a very smart person. Wrote this open letter to the universe about the threat of AI. I actually don't have a reference. That's easy to, that was all over the news for a while. So I say it's died down. But anyway, so this is from Eric Horvitz, this quote that I'm about to read. Eric was one of the co-signers of that open letter. This is not from the open letter. This is from an interview a couple of years later. Doesn't matter. Same idea. We could one day lose control of AI systems via the rise of super intelligences that do not act in accordance with human wishes, and that such powerful systems would threaten humanity. Are such dystopic outcomes possible? I take it his answer is yes. He doesn't, I assume it's yes. Yes, it is possible. If so, how might these situations arise? What kind of investments in research should be made to better understand and to address the possibility of the rise of a dangerous superintelligence or the occurrence of an intelligence explosion? I don't get that last bit, but anyway.
Well, it could be the singularity where they suddenly become more and more intelligent.
Yes, I know, that's kind of what he has in mind. But okay, now, maybe. So this is not the issue I'm going to be addressing. I don't know what issue that is, by the way. It's I can't get my head around it quite. But this is not the issue I'm addressing. The really big, scary Terminator takes over the world and kills us all issue, or enslaves us or something, okay? I just want to say one thing. Namely, it would be nice to know what the heck these people mean by superintelligence. Now, Ray Kurzweil has a particular answer, which I find completely crazy. So I'm not going to tell you what it is. You can look it up. That's the singularity, by which he means something almost definite. Kind of, almost.
People in this community are referring to work by Oxford professor Nick Bostrom.
Yeah, I don't know what, yeah, but I don't know what he means by it either. Here's what I mean by it. And when I mean, this, I don't know, I'm just, it's not as if I'm making this up out of whole cloth. As some of you will see, it's kind of a reference to, I'm gonna, because I'm old, classical decision theory, the classical decision theoretic picture of intelligent behavior. So as I said, there is a kind of technical background. I'm going to keep it in the background, but here's a little reference to it. Okay, so what do I mean by superintelligence? Well, I don't know, but here's a try. The ability to determine the best, that is the most utility maximizing, the most preference satisfying, whatever, course of action, given perhaps a multi-dimensional valuation or utility criterion, because it's best, or really damn good, by the way, anyway, in a much wider range of typically uncertain circumstances. So again, reference to the technical background, a much larger state space, much, much more quickly and more reliably than any human possibly could. So in other words, what I'm saying there is take what I think of as the best starting point for thinking about intelligent action. I do not believe it's the correct end point, stopping point, I guess one should say. But I do think it's the best starting point, the foundation of almost all work in mathematical social sciences, and much else, by the way, namely decision theory. That gives you a picture of what intelligent action is. Okay, superintelligent action, or superintelligent agent, is an agent that does a lot of that. Acts super intelligently a lot. I don't know. Okay? That's my picture.
Well, it could be that it has a better model of the world than we do, so it can make predictions more accurately.
Oddly enough, it's not clear what better model of the world means in decision theory. I actually am sympathetic with that picture. That's a technical aside, which we can get to after I'm done. I'm very happy to return to that question.
Are you going to cover the red button on the robot where they?
No.
You're not, because they're.
I know. I mean, well,
because they have a different session of what's in.
I'm not covering it explicitly. That's a part of the technical background I have in the mind, is this work on what's called inverse reinforcement learning. I'm just going to put that phrase out there. Again, this is not a technical talk. Yes?
Sort of forks, though. I mean, in the sense it's Cartesian. You're
Me?
sense, yeah,
I am not a Cartesian.
In a sense of a mental model being the sort of mitigation between knowing the world and the viewer of the world. No,
this is just, I don't know what that means. All I mean is you think about some, it needn't be a human being, but let's say it's a human being. Right? And you're kind of saying, how intelligent is that human being? Now that could mean lots of different things. It could mean like how much set theory does he know? That's an answer. I mean, it could be that. But no, decision theory says, nah, put all that aside. Look.
Okay, so
anyway.
I mean, if you were Dreyfus, if you looked at Dreyfus.
Dreyfus. You might as well pronounce the name correctly.
And you go from a Heideggerian standpoint, you might stand outside of this a little. It's just another form.
No, but that's what, notice I'm doing it. I'm standing outside. I'm talking about, here's some agent. How intelligently does that agent act? So
and the good thing about
it's all outside
is you're
in one
using
sense.
words that, maybe one or two of them have a few too many syllables in them.
Oh yeah, I like to use big words.
But
I do.
What you're saying is, well, they're not quite as big as they could be. But most of this is very understandable, no matter what your background is, and I think that's what you're trying to get to.
This is kind of this is actually the standard way of thinking about what people do. Yeah. Why did they do that? Well, because she believed that and wanted that. That's kind of why,
Exactly.
Right? Why did I get an umbrella on my way out of my house this morning? One, because I believed it was raining. It was going to rain. It was actually already raining. It was raining. And two, I didn't want to get wet. And I believe that if I have an umbrella over me, I won't get so wet. That's it. That's what that is. Except that's not like super intelligent. It's kind of, anyway, minimally intelligent. Okay, anyway. So I'm not worried about Skynet and whatever, the Terminator. I'm not really. I am worried about Arnold Schwarzenegger. I used to be. Not anymore. But anyway, I'm not worried about that. I have more immediate worries, right? And that is that we already have. We are, in some sense, surrounded by, literally, actually, already significantly autonomous systems doing lots of things already, right? So here are some examples. I'm not going to go through any of this stuff. Just that, I mean, you can all read it. It's all pretty simple-minded on purpose. In all these cases, there is meant to be, at least, human monitoring, and with the possibility of human intervention. Okay, to different degrees, and anyway, that's what it's supposed to be. Okay, boom. So I'm going really quickly here. So the most salient case for most people with respect to at least partially autonomous systems are partially autonomous vehicles. In particular, actually partially autonomous cars and trucks. There are other vehicles. There are the ones up in, anyway. There are all these partially autonomous vehicles on going on every medium, physical medium that there is, kind of. But people think about cars. Okay, now what you should all do is take a look at the Society of Automotive Engineers, it's actually the International Society or something, their webpage. So they're the guys who came up with the 6 degrees of autonomy, only it's 6 levels. They don't call it degrees. 6 levels of autonomy, and because they're geeks like me, of a different kind, I'm not a car geek, they start with 0, right? It's 0 to 5 is like, inclusive, so it's 6. Okay, I'm not gonna, and here's the page. I mean, you should look at it. These people have thought through a lot of this, I mean, not how to solve these problems. They've thought through the kind of framework for characterizing driving, and this, anyway, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm not going to talk about cars. I should give you various reasons. One is because they're not as sexy as, well, this is a terrible thing to say, but it's true. So one of the reasons I go for weapons, frankly, is because they're just, I mean, it's sexy in a bad way, right? They're just, whoa, yes. Cars can kill people. There aren't many cars small enough not to be able to kill somebody, even at relatively low speeds. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so cars are, they're deadly things, right? They kill people. But basically, cars, and this is true for, I mean, it's a little more complicated for planes, actually, but let's stick with cars and trucks. Cars and trucks essentially have one mission in life: to get from A to B and to carry things or people from A to B. That's it. That's what they do. Okay? In that respect, they're not so interesting from my point of view.
They don't have one mission in life. They also do not destroy things along the way.
No,
they have time constraints.
Time constraints that's built into the first mission. There's kind of constraints on the first mission. Anyway, at the high level, they do one thing. They travel from A to B. It's kind of I'm not, that's one reason I don't think they're as interesting. That is, they're too monomaniacal. You might say weapons have only one mission: to kill. That's misleading. If you're thinking about autonomous weapons, if you're thinking about machine guns, yes, but they have no mission at all. The people who use them have missions, maybe, do have missions, but machine guns don't. Autonomous weapons is kind of more complicated. That's my picture. But also, frankly, so they're more interesting, but also, frankly, they grab attention. Talking about autonomous weapons grabs attention. much more successfully even than talking about autonomous vehicles, I think. And you should keep that in mind, because this talk is not, I mean, it's really more, I mean, there will be a focus on autonomous weapons, precisely because they're with us. In terms of technical capability, they're already here. That's one. And two, they are very sexy, but really, my main focus is broader. It's on, okay? It's on significantly capable, typically with multiple capabilities, autonomous systems. That's really what, but okay. Now,
David, what is the point at which you call a weapon to be autonomous?
I'll get to that. At the moment, I'm using this word. Everybody uses this word. What does it mean? I'll get to that.
Like landmines are not autonomous. Like if I look at landmines, should I think of them as autonomous?
Almost surely not, although there could be autonomous landmines. I'm not saying there couldn't be.
Zero level of
But, well, yeah, you might say they have zero level of autonomy. I mean, one thing, autonomy it's a degree word. I mean, it's not like yes, it's not a binary, it's a.
Well, the same thing could be said about intelligence, and you're glossing over all that.
No,
And you
I'm
have a
not.
thermostat, it's got intelligence to it.
I'm not denying that. I'm actually not denying that. All these things, that's why I said if you read this, what I said about superintelligence, it's clearly a matter of degree or comparison. It's built in to my notion of superintelligence and hence intelligence. So, yeah.
How about heat-seeking missiles that once you have set them off, maybe have?
No, they have a little bit of autonomy, but
not much.
yeah, not much. Again, it's not like,
I'm trying to narrow down what
Yeah.
you're saying. What you're saying
Right.
is they don't change what they're doing
right.
with respect to certain.
They will change direction when the target changes direction.
Exactly, but not in
if
respect
they're-
to
yeah.
other things.
Exactly. Okay, so some of the same people who who signed the open letter on like the end of the world, some of those same people also wrote, and these are the people I have in mind when I said I am not Paul Revere here, wrote an open letter to the United Nations Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but anyway, there is. So this doesn't include Stephen Hawking, not because he wasn't smart enough, but because he's not an AI researcher. So this was AI researchers, broadly speaking, only. Okay, and that was good. I mean, I thought that was a good decision. Anyway, so here it is. It's the same thing. I'm going to read. Don't worry. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want. Okay, autonomous weapons. So this is partly an answer, but not. This is not an answer to what do you mean by autonomous. It's an answer to what do these characters mean by autonomous weapons. Not quite the same, but they're connected, obviously. Autonomous weapons select and engage targets without human intervention. That's a big thing. There you go. I like that. Right? So they could pick out things to kill or bomb on their own.
But even landmines do that.
No, landmines do not pick out. They don't pick.
Weights. So depending on the weight, it will decide whether to kill it.
No.
Select
Again,
is a will, shows some kind of action.
But will is an algorithm.
no. Yeah, I don't like the word will. But if you want to say that landmines, like thermostats, have some degree of intelligence, I don't mean the people who design them, they have some degree of intelligence. And the people who build them, they have some degree of intelligence. I mean, the things themselves, I don't care. I mean, I'm a liberal about these things. It's just that I want more or less, and they're way less. So that's okay. I mean, really, I don't,
What if the weapon were smarter than the person that can make more ethical decisions?
Well, you're getting way ahead of me. Okay.
Ethics exist without will. That's the only
Hold it.
question I have.
You're getting way. So anyway, and then there's the rest of this stuff, blah, blah, blah. So notice this. I mean, so there is this thing. I don't know what GGE is. I couldn't remind myself what that was. And I didn't do the research recently.
Government experts go off one paragraph.
Oh, that's right. Just that. Okay. Yeah. This is the thing that's important. There's this convention on certain, so conventional means non-nuclear, and non-nuclear and actually non-biochemical. I mean, so yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, because otherwise these are not conventional weapons, right? I mean, if you think about like robot soldiers or something. Okay. Anyway, okay. Okay, now just as an, you should look on the web for this. So I assume you all know what the AK-47 is. The most popular, for many people, the most popular because the best assault rifle ever made. Mr. Kalashnikov, he's dead, Mr. Kalashnikov. He has a company. The company has recently been bought. I don't know if you noticed that. Anyway, so the company, Kalashnikov, has announced, this was last year. Actually, they announced it. You won't get many talks by a philosophy PhD in which there are references to popular mechanics. That's all. Not that, by the way, I do not read popular mechanics. But anyway, so Russian weapons maker Kalashnikov is working on, they've got, I mean, they're trying to make it better, of course. But anyway. So they've got this extremely high caliber, extremely fast shooting, very large, and hence large caliber, machine gun mounted on its own little UGV. So it travels around by itself and, you know, it finds targets and kills. I mean, that's the idea, right? It just kills them, okay? It's extremely scary looking. I mean, it's terrifying, frankly. And it's, you know, I'm not going to blah, blah, blah.
Well, what about the boomerang weapon system that was used in Afghanistan and Iraq?
Yeah, so.
Uses microphones to determine where
yes.
Guns are being shot. And
it's still the case. No, that case has come up in discussion. By the way, I wish I could remember. You know, I'm not just retired. I'm old. There are things I don't remember. So that's a case, again, in which the targeting, it depends what one means by targeting. Very good. I'm sorry. So the specification of the target to be distinguished from the targeting is done by a human, and the human, so it's, you know, so look for this, I'll say guy, look for this guy, and if you find him, kill him. And then they're monitored, and if the guy who's the target, and that was set by a human, if the guy is, you know, some of you may have seen this movie with Dame Helen Mirren, called Eye in the Sky. If the target is next to a cute little girl, notice if it was a cute little boy, it wasn't so clear that they were going to, anyway, it's how the movie went. I'm just saying. You know, don't kill him yet, right? So the human is, you know, anyway. But yes, so that's like more autonomy, but still not by my lights enough to be of interest for my purposes here. That's all. I mean, as I said, I will get to more about. Okay, now, so the Rusky. Now, I think I skipped a slide. That's what's weird. No, okay, I don't know. I've changed the order is what I've done. Anyway, so the U.S. military. So it's not just AI researchers have been thinking about this, which is good. Even better is that people in the U.S. military have been thinking about it. And quite high up, by the way, in the U.S. military. And that's even better as long as they're thinking about it reasonably. It wouldn't be better if they weren't thinking about it, if they were thinking about it, but not reasonably. That would not be better. But, okay, so this is from General Paul Selva. That's him. And he's pretty high up. He's actually the second highest ranking uniformed officer in the U.S. military. Okay? The vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. One of the places where we spend a great deal of time is determining whether or not the tools we are developing, and he's talking about autonomous weapons, really, or significantly autonomous, I should say, weapons, absolve humans of the decision to inflict violence on the enemy. That is a fairly bright line that we're not willing to cross. Now, that's not the happiest way to say what he meant to say, but you'll see what he meant to say was, no, humans have to be in charge of these lethal decisions. Okay? And there's, anyway. So, in fact, here's U.S. military doctrine as of May 2017. So first, there's the official definition of autonomous weapons. Again, haven't yet said what autonomy comes to in general. But here's the official. So this is from DoD Directive 3. I love it. One of the great things about the government is that it generates all this paper, and it all has to have these weird titles. I mean, weird numbering systems. Anyway, so 3000.09 of 2012 is amended May 8, 2010. A weapon system that once activated, so you push the go button, as it were, can select and engage targets without further intervention by a human operator. Now, notice, select and engage. So the boomerang system doesn't select.
It selects by where the gunshots are coming from.
No, that, yes.
Determines.
Yeah,
Determines where to.
yeah. The boomerang system is an interesting system. Engage, okay, blah, blah. This includes, as it should include, human supervised autonomous weapon systems that are designed to allow human operators to override operation of the weapon system. But still, even though there's room, as it were, for the human to intervene, the human doesn't have to intervene, and they'll go off and kill somebody, but can select and engage targets without further human input after activation. And here's the scope of the doctrine. I love it. They're wonderfully explicit about all these things. The scope of the doctrine governs the design, development, acquisition, testing, fielding, and employment of autonomous and semi-autonomous weapon systems, including guided munitions that can independently select and discriminate targets, and the application of lethal or non-lethal, kinetic or non-kinetic force. Now, what they mean by non-kinetic force is never clear to me, frankly. But what's odd is anyway, by autonomous or semi-autonomous weapon systems. Anybody know what they mean by non-kinetic force?
Lasers? Lasers.
Gas. Lasers, gas.
The gas is non-conventional
Sound.
weapon.
Yeah,
They
no.
mean, they mean lasers.
You think they mean lasers? Okay. It's not clear. I mean, it depends what you mean. I mean, so this is not physics. They're not doing. I mean, so it's not like. I mean, it's because it's not like there's no kinetic energy in a laser. But anyway, okay.
Does this include cyber warfare or something like that?
No, that's what I first thought that went. So oftentimes in the military, when one says non-kinetic operations, you do mean, roughly speaking, psyops. That is, operations intended to win the hearts and minds of the people, as they say. Some version of that. That's not what they mean here.
Yeah, but now we're talking cyber weapons and cyber warfare. And
Cyber and I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes, very good. I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Yes, it would include, yes. And that's, well, some of them are, well, I don't know. You should, I mean, some of them might be non-kinetic in the intuitive sense. Some of them might be kinetic. Well, yeah. Anyway, that's a good question. Anyway, okay, U.S. military. So here's the bottom line. Requires meaningful human control of any and all targeting decisions and performance. That's a quote, by the way. That's the bottom line isn't, I mean, that's my annotation. So this is from the same Department of Defense directive, and they have these headings, policy, so you can't miss. That's the policy. It is DoD policy that autonomous and semi-autonomous weapon systems shall be designed to allow commanders and operators to exercise appropriate levels of human judgment over the use of force. Persons who authorize the use of, direct the use of, or operate autonomous and semi-autonomous weapon systems must do so with appropriate care, and in accordance with the laws of war, applicable treaties, weapon system safety rules, and applicable rules of engagement. Ta-da! That's U.S. military doctrine. It's also, by the way, official NATO military doctrine. And I'm here quoting from something that's got nothing to do with autonomous weapon systems. It's a more general picture about, hey, take care when you kill people, basically. That's right. A good thing for a military to have in mind. So, while all reasonably, so this is from NATO Allied Joint Doctrine, AJPT, blah, 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 blah. While all reasonably feasible care must be taken at each stage, remember, this is for people. I mean, that's what it's aimed, it's talking about not just but about people. While all reasonably feasible care must be taken at each stage of the targeting process, targeting decisions and actions are not legally judged based on perfection or that of hindsight. This is, again, think my decision theory story. Yeah, it's what you believe at the time. Honestly, and as they say, decision theory doesn't say anything about honestly, by the way.
And you have only a short time to make a decision.
Well, that's exactly right. Those involved need only take those precautions that were reasonably feasible at the time of their decision or actions, and in the circumstances prevailing at the time, which might include the other guy trying to kill you, which happens in war, just one of those things. However, this objective standard also means that recklessness, negligence, notice it says this objective standard, which I find striking. This objective standard also means that recklessness, negligence, and willful blindness provide no excuse to unlawful targeting. Okay? Now, put that together with what we were talking about with respect to autonomous weapons, and the weird conclusion is, which I think is absolutely correct, by the way, that's kind of my bottom line in an odd way, is that there's nothing new here. Move on, there's nothing new. I mean, literally, there's nothing new, right? That is, the doctrine with respect to autonomous weapons is just the same doctrine with respect to other stuff, including the autonomous weapons. That is, they've got to be careful. They can go around and kill people. I mean, I'm just, that's right. You got to be straight about what's going on there. That's kind of what's going on. That's the, but they got to be careful. They can't just say, oh, I don't like that guy, I'm going to kill him. No, that's not good. You can't do that. They have to respect the rules, even when they're on their own. But to the extent to which they're on their own, they've got to respect the laws of war, the ROE, all that other stuff, right? You can't just, okay? It's the same. And I think that's exactly right at this level of characterization. Right?
But if they are better at making decisions than humans are, couldn't you? Why would you allow humans to intervene? And even if it's blocking them from killing something, they may be blocking them from killing
Very
something
good.
that's going to be killing you.
We'll get back to that, but notice that doesn't challenge that conclusion. As far as I can tell, it doesn't challenge that conclusion. Some people are smarter than other people. It's the way it works, kind of, and sometimes the people who are smarter than the other person is under the command of the person who's less smart than he. That happens. It's life. It doesn't change the rules, it doesn't change anything.
I think he's saying, why would you have it? It seems to make it totally unnecessary. If the machine has to act as ethical as the human on their own, why do you need to have the human override it in any case?
I'm not saying you do need to. All I'm saying is with respect to this, so far, this is an intermediate conclusion, as it were. It's like, hey, and I think they're absolutely right, although they don't say this. I think they're absolutely right.
So who would be held responsible? If you go back one slide, right, there's a unlawful target.
Yeah.
Let's say that we identify that there was an unlawful targeting using autonomous systems.
Yeah.
So do you hold the person who switched on the autonomous system responsible? Or do you hold the person who programmed the decision algorithms within the autonomous system responsible?
So that's the question, of course, which people are now dealing with, in particular with respect to autonomous vehicles. Literally, if you look in the New York Times Sunday, you have to look at the New York Times Sunday magazine, honest, for this. This has come up now over the last 3, 4, 5 years, I don't know, for some time. People thinking ahead to autonomous vehicles again, even though the vehicle doesn't decide what its destination is, I mean, the vehicle, take my word for it, doesn't care. So, but it's completely, it's level 5 autonomy, or even level 4. Level 3, it's a bit more complicated, but I don't want to get into these details. Anyway, but it's very nice in the Sunday Times magazine. The whole issue is about autonomous cars and driving and stuff. And sure enough, there's a thing about liability. Now, liability, this is not ethical responsibility yet. I mean, at least it needn't be, but there is an issue about legal responsibility, culpability. And I'm not going to address that at all at the moment. But yes, it's a real issue. There are issues I'm not going to try to, I have views about all of them, but I'm not addressing them. Yes, it will raise issues if there are autonomous weapon systems and they're fully, as it were, the analog of level 4 or 5. I mean, really pretty damn autonomous. And they commit a war crime. They, just think My Lai 2030. Let's assume it's not in Vietnam, so it won't be My Lai. But anyway, right? Except it's just like robots. Or, okay, it's a war crime. How do you allocate responsibility? Either ethical, insofar as, or even legal. But those issues arise. So those issues arise even with just people, namely the responsibility of commanding officers at various levels.
Yeah.
It's not just about intelligence,
Complex.
it's about sensors. If your sensors aren't good,
No, I agree.
or they're blinded by something, you're gonna.
No, very good. No, very good. I'm just like NATO, and just like my decision theory says, my decision theory would say. Right? So the weird thing about standard decision theory, this is, I think, a weird thing. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say standard. So here I'm going to get a little technical, but not really very. So my favorite versions of decision theory are versions of what's called subjective expected utility maximization theory, blah, blah, blah. Where the subjective means, roughly speaking, Bayesian with respect to the probability distribution. Now, if you're a real Bayesian, if you're a kind of, I think, overly crazed Bayesian, what you say is, take any prior, here I'm getting a little technical, I'm not, take any prior that's a kosher probability distribution. That's okay. Doesn't matter what the prior is, whatever it is. Given enough time, if you conditionalize, you'll end up, it won't be so bad, right? That's the theory. Honest, that is the theory. My view is, that's a little crazy. So what you really have in mind in applying this theory is to critters that start out with mildly reliable sensors. So their beliefs about their current circumstances, at least that, are kind of vaguely a little bit okay. They're pretty good. That's, or else the critter wouldn't have a chance no matter what. I mean, roughly, that's kind of the picture, okay? There are other versions. There is what's called, I hate this, objective Bayesians, which means if your critter has access to, I'll say good without saying what that means. I could say what that means, but to good frequency, to good statistics. This is pre-prior. Yeah, you have to think of it that way. Pre-prior. So somebody's collected pretty good statistics about something. Then the critter has access to the results, roughly. Then the critter's prior should be you should honor to the extent, right? The critter's prior should go along with those good frequency statistics, et cetera, et cetera. So my own view is, I don't like that view, but I like the one I said before that. You think about kind of pretty reliable sensors. You have to figure out the scope of reliability. That's in real cases. But yeah. Anyway, it's all kind of blah, blah, blah. Okay, okay, now, so we got what U.S. military doctrine is. Current military doctrine, I shouldn't say this, but notice this has nothing to do with who the president of the United States is. It actually doesn't, by the way. The stuff has nothing to do with it. Anyway, so that's current U.S.
That's the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, the commander-in-chief, it actually doesn't matter. As it happens, it actually doesn't matter. So, boom, current U.S. military doctrine. But really, and the military knows this, take my word for this, they know this, that there are pressures towards letting these already existing, by the way, I am talking about already existing systems that have the capacity to be much more autonomous than they're allowed to be. I'm not talking about, this is not science fiction. Right? They realize there are bound to be, and there are real pressures coming from, as they sometimes say, the tempo of battle. But it's not just the tempo. So imagine if the human who's in charge, or the humans who are in charge of, letting this thing do whatever it is, just they're out of contact with the thing, or they can't really monitor what it's doing in its surroundings well or reliably at all, And stuff is happening quickly, as often does happen in war. Okay, there are just significant pressures in the direction of okay, I'm going to let this guy, this artificial guy, do its thing and hope for the best or something. There are significant, completely rational pressures of that kind. Okay, so there really could be big problems. Right? Again, never mind that some people in the military might themselves be sadistic, crazy people. There is very little reason to think that there are a lot of those in the career military. But I'm not worried about that problem, right? This is like just the way the world goes. There could be real problems. And this now gets some of the questions about the moral agency or moral responsibility of increasingly autonomous and broadly capable, that is, these things can do lots of different things, artifacts. And not just their designers and builders and blah, blahs and blah, blahs, right? Okay, so there are natural cases to think about. They're all wildly wrong, but it's good to think about them. So everybody's, at least my favorite case, because this is a history I happen to know by accident, but I happen to know it. So, namely the development of atomic and hydrogen bombs, right? What can I say? Without making I'm not going to say anything about decisions to drop the bomb twice, bombs, once each. These are tremendously complicated moral issues arise, but not for the bombs, not for the bombs, famously, as some of you know this history, because it's so fascinating, I think, after Germany more or less surrendered, before they literally officially surrendered, but after it was clear that Germany was defeated, and by that time it was clear that there was no German atom bomb program, really. There's a whole history there about whether there had been one and whether or not it was in some ways undermined by Werner Heisenberg, who was its leader, technical leader. That's a complicated story, I think. But at some point, it was absolutely clear that Germany was they were out of this thing. A significant number of the scientists involved at Los Alamos said, well, okay, let's quit, basically. We don't, there's no reason to do this. And they were appalled, it's quite clear, whether they were right or not, it's quite clear, they were appalled by the decision to drop the first and then even more the second bombs on Japan. And there was this enormous rupture at Los Alamos about this issue. as well there should have been. That's a tremendously deep ethical issue, I think. I'm not talking about that at all. Not at all. Okay. Anyway, there's another analogy that is more relevant in a certain way, and it's got to do with that open letter by the AI guys. So in 1970, so in the early 70s, there was this big to-do in the press about genetic engineering, about Frankenstein genes, and just getting out of the labs and killing everybody. Kind of very similar to the worries about, I mean, similar in a way, at least, to the worries about, super intelligences and Skynet and Terminator and stuff. And Paul.
But I think the Asilomar thing is probably really referring more to accidents that really get out of control quickly.
Yes. No, it wasn't. That's right. They weren't worried about purposeful, kind of crazy scientists. That's quite right. But because there was a lot of press about it, and because Congress was already starting, I'm not sure they had yet held hearings when Berg started organizing the conference at Asilomar. But there were moves in that. I mean, there was senators and representatives speaking out in public, as it were, about, what are we going to do about this stuff, And Berg notices, Paul Berg, who was at Stanford, noticed this, and he said, look, if we, the relevant scientific community, don't get together and kind of think through some of these issues and make some decisions about precisely trying to ensure that there won't be any release, any bad accidents, then Congress is going to do it, and they don't know what they're doing. I mean, with respect at least to biology, that was certainly true, that they didn't know what they were doing. So this is a bit like that. I do think there's a bit of that. Not yet, frankly, I don't know of any move in Congress to think about this stuff. But still, it's different. I mean, because these systems, the picture is, these systems are going to be out there making decisions on their own and acting on those decisions. The little genie thing, don't do that. Honest. I mean, so.
But David, if there's always a person in the loop, is that an issue? Because I mean, you had cited
no, but
the possibility that we could be out of touch with the machines. But if there's a fail-safe such that
no, very good. So, as I said, right now, current U.S. military doctrine demands that there be a human on the loop, as they say, not in the loop, right, yeah. On the loop. That is monitoring. So he's not doing anything himself. I mean, that's a stupid way to put it, but anyway, you know what I mean. Monitoring the system or systems, and with the ability to intervene effectively.
To push the red button.
Push the red button.
Right, stop.
Yeah, push the red button. Now, the problem is that's current military doctrine, and that's nice. But as I note, there are perfectly reasonable, I actually do mean this, perfectly reasonable pressures from within the military to kind of relax that a little bit in certain circumstances.
Oh, I see.
And I think those are perfectly reasonable, and they're not going to go away, I think. I mean, I see no reason to think they're going to go away.
The doctrine doesn't make any difference.
No, see, that's people, no. If they change the doctrine, that would be different.
Yeah,
the fact that the law is sometimes broken doesn't mean the law doesn't make any difference. So it doesn't, does it?
It does in warfare. Oh, it absolutely does.
No, it doesn't. Even in warfare, right? It's not the case.
I'm not talking about legal. I'm talking about what actually happens.
No, but you're wrong. Even though some countries have violated the international conventions against the use of chemical weapons, it's not the case that most countries, or actually even more than the ones that originally did it, have violated the International Convention Against Chemical Warfare. It just isn't true. You got to watch out for the kind of going, one bad thing happens, and so the world goes to hell. It's not true.
I think you're talking about unconventional weapons there. I think in conventional weapons actually there is a doctrine that actually talks about not being able to be aggressive in some area, but being able to retaliate and protect yourself against an aggression. And I'm trying to think of what it is.
No, of course, there's the law, there's the doctrine in the Geneva Conventions, not the Geneva Conventions about prisoners, by the way. This, that outlaw, not that there's any legal sanction, that outlaw what's called aggressive war, but which allow defensive war and even preemptive war in the event that there are good grounds for thinking an attack is imminent. Now that's obviously, you might think that's an enormous loophole. Well, it is in a way, but is it the case that people are constantly barging through that loophole? Countries? Actually, no, as it happens. But anyway, well, no, we haven't yet done that.
We'll get into that because I think we have, but never mind.
You thinking about Korea? Korea, we did it.
About like the last 16 years.
No. Think about. We'll do this later. Come up with a case in which clearly it was a preemptive strike.
Like Grenada.
That was not. We were not afraid of an attack from Grenada. Take my word for it. No, people just. It's. Anyway, this is kind of serious shit. It's good to think about it more seriously. That's kind of a general. It's a general view that I have.
But if I don't see how you can say that, because they say it can't be, it has to have this adult supervision. I'll think of it that way in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Except.
No. That's not what I'm saying. Right now, the doctrine has no exception. No exception.
Right. So.
Now, my worry is that with perfectly good reason, I don't think this is crazy people, with perfectly good reason, and the doctrine itself will be amended. That's a different worry than the worry about someone's going to violate the doctrine.
My point was, if it's amended, it's gone. That you can't make an amendment that says kinda.
No, you can make very precise exceptions. Again, that doesn't mean they won't be violated, but you can make precise exceptions.
Okay, I'm back in an ethical framework.
Yeah, well, so am I actually.
What
But
you do is shift the ethics onto the device. Right?
Well, that's in the end, of course. That's what you have to do. If they're going to be autonomous, they've got to make decisions with significant ethical consequences, and so they've got to kind of take those into account. Okay. Anyway, this is not a big deal. Just another issue I wasn't going to talk about, and I'm not going to talk about, is the worry about robots taking over. I mean, again, robots in this big broad sense, taking over everybody's job or the jobs of lots of people. I do think that is going to happen. It's already happening. I do think that's going to happen more, but that's not. I mean, that's a separate worry. But it is good to think about, the difference between, so you can have automation without any autonomy or minimal, since people like this, 0 plus epsilon. So think about the traditional industrial robot, fixed in place with its environment engineered around it. It doesn't even have to perceive. The widgets come down the thing, it doesn't have to perceive. It just every 2 seconds it does this. Doesn't blind, right? Anyway. And of course you can have autonomy without it being automation of anything. Just, no people do this, but this robot can do it. Anyway. So, finally, what's an autonomous action or an autonomous agent? Now, as I said, I'm avoiding almost all technicalities, and I do think this notion of autonomy is not and should not be thought of as a precisely definable technical notion. It just isn't. Like many of the notions we use in thinking about human action and activity, it's not a precisely defined notion. That doesn't mean there's nothing one can say about it, but it won't be satisfying if you have a certain kind of demand in mind. It won't meet that demand. Okay, so what are autonomous actions? It's just the way I think mostly we think about them. That's what's weird. We don't usually use the word autonomous, to be honest, but still, okay? Right? They're actions whose causes are their reasons. That's one way of putting it. That is, they're actions of agents that are caused by the agent's own, what's going on in his or her mind. And again, from a decision theory point of view, which is a place to start, not a place to end, roughly speaking, they're actions that are caused by the agent's beliefs and desires, put together in a certain way that decision theory says, kind of, whatever. Okay? Again, that's it. That is, again, go back to my deciding to take an umbrella this morning, which I did actually, on the way out of my house this morning. Now, saying that's an autonomous action is kind of glorifying it in the certain, right? But it was. It was. Nobody forced me to do it. No one pushed me into, I don't know, it was. It was an autonomous action.
A clock is also autonomous. It does,
No. Autonomous in this sense. That is, I'm not saying autonomous.
Everything it does is
the technical problem of why the clock doesn't have beliefs, desires, and intentions.
No, that's, again, I don't, so the clock is actually different from the thermostat. The clock, I think, I don't see much in it.
Well, take the thermostat.
Yeah, no, but that's just it. The thermostat, I'm prepared to grant that it's got kind of a small degree of intelligence. I'm with John McCarthy on that. But I don't care. It doesn't. Well, again, you call it, yeah. Yes. No, that's right. Yes, you don't fool the clock. Let's not go kind of relativistic on us. Yes, you can put it on a rocket ship, but that's not fooling it either.
Any actions here that are not autonomous in some minimal degree?
Oh, well, yes, sneezing.
Fire the weapon.
No, sneezing.
Bullet out of the gun.
Sneezing mostly isn't autonomous, although mostly. Well, no, you can see, so the problem is you can get yourself to sneeze. And I don't mean just I don't mean just pretend to sneeze. You can get yourself to sneeze.
I think you can bring on sneezes.
Yeah, there are various things. But again, really, this is, I think, I'm not, it's a mistake to think there's going to be a clear line here. There isn't. It's just a mistake. And there's no reason why you should think there would be, by the way. I don't know why one would think that. I don't, as it happens. It's a kind of messy notion, like a lot of these notions actually are messy. Okay, so anyway, but we kind of don't have these problems most of the time, actually. When we judge people's behavior, never mind along ethical dimensions, even that was a pretty smart thing to do. We kind of think because the person had these beliefs and wanted something to come out, and like a move in chess. That was a pretty smart move in chess there. Why? Well, we assume the person wants to win. And he's got these beliefs and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, okay. So there is this notion. The notion of autonomy originally, I think, was applied not to people. It was applied to governing entities, as it were. And the idea was they were kind of independent. They acted on their own.
Any notion of learning and memory here? Like, do you think this sort of robot soldier, this soldier will shoot a child because last time he saw a child, that child was carrying a weapon. So now it has learned that children are bad and therefore they shoot.
Well, so that would be a pretty stupid robot. But learning is, so again, this is a weird thing I'm about to say. And it's one of the reasons why I do say classical decision theory is a good place to begin. It is not a good place to end. Classical decision theory says nothing about learning beyond conditionalization. Again, I have in mind subjective expected utility decision theory. The only mechanism, as it were, is conditionalization, which is a very special kind of learning, if you think of it as learning at all, which I do. I do think of it as learning. But so the picture is, again, in the simple, I'm not defending this, I'm reporting literally, that there are all these belief, I'll say belief formation and maintenance mechanisms that are put in the background in decision theory. What counts at a given time is, what does the guy believe now? Never mind how he got there. As I say, like I said about sensors, I think you want to add in something like a requirement, especially if you're thinking about designing critters. Remember, we get to design these critters, of reliable belief formation mechanisms. And some of which would be learning, and also memory, actually. I mean,
saying we have to make sure they don't learn the wrong things, but the wrong.
well, you can't make sure they don't learn the wrong things. That you can't do if you think about it. But you want them to learn. You want them to form new beliefs reliably. Now, the thing about conditionalization, even if you go for generalized conditionalization, no, you have to know what that means. Anyway. So it's looser-gooser than standard conditionalization. It's like, it's too simple a mechanism. But yeah, you want reliable, so it's too easily guaranteed to be it's too easily guaranteed to be rational. Whereas real learning, you can't, it's harder to guarantee it to be I shouldn't have said rational. Reliable. Anyway, but yeah. Okay. So again, I think of this as the absolutely standard way that we think about adult human beings. Again, we don't use this fancy word autonomous. We just, yeah, he did it. She did it. No, that was not on purpose. That was an accident. That was automatic. Like, sneezing when someone throws pepper on whatever it is. I don't know. Anyway. We make those decisions, those distinctions all the time. I'm not saying we're always right. That's impossible. But I mean, we get that picture. And that picture that's the picture. Nothing fancy. That's the picture. The thing is, if you think about it that way, again, decision theory or beyond, it does naturally generate the question, well, to what extent are we responsible for to what extent am I responsible for my beliefs? Now, responsible, I don't mean by responsible. I mean causally responsible. Solely me. Huh? You got to be kidding. Most of what, an enormous amount of what I believe comes from, and crucially through other people, other people's heads, not just my head. Now, I don't know. Anyway, so one typically doesn't think about the issue of causal responsibility for beliefs and desires, or beliefs and preferences, having to be rooted in the person. But that's not a typical, and with good reason, that's not a necessary condition for autonomy. No, all that matters is, however you got those, again, there are weird cases like hypnosis, who cares? There are these silly cases, but who cares? In general, we take it that an action is autonomous, where all that means is kind of the person did it. He or she did it. They're responsible, again, in the intuitive sense, when it's caused in the normal way, whatever that way is. I have no idea what that way is, by that person's beliefs and desires, however they came to those beliefs and desires. Now, there are weird cases.
Unless they were eating Twinkies.
Yeah, no. So there are cases. No, I agree. I'm going to get to such a case. Yeah, the Twinkie defense. No, that's so am I. No, I agree, and I'll get to my favorite case about that, which is not the Twinkie. I should have used the Twinkie case because that's a real case.
Yeah, your attribution of who's responsible is very subjective, right? There's no
bright line.
There's no legal.
I don't like the word subjective. I don't like subjective, but yes, it's not. This is not like measuring lengths with rods and durations with clocks.
No, but
It's not like that.
But what he was saying is I mean, I totally agree. There's a wide range in society of if you ask the question, is a certain person responsible for a certain action, you get a wide range of responses, right? Because of what they were taught or some environmental thing or
Society. Also, I mean, you can take the same facts.
No, but that's
take the same facts about an incident, frame them in one way, and get a different conclusion from a panel of jurors, right?
Exactly.
And you can.
All that's true, but to my mind, irrelevant. I mean, literally, that is because remember, all I'm saying is that. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just right. What I'm saying is, we should realize that our notion of autonomous action is really is a kind of messy, common sense, not scientifically precisifiable, I love that word, notion.
I think we would agree to that like an hour ago.
Well, no, but that's not the main part of my talk. Because if it were, I would have said that and that would have been the end. But despite that, there is a commonality with respect, oddly enough, not with respect to the final judgments, although I think there's more commonality with respect to final judgments than people tend to think. There's more agreement than people, when they're in their argumentative mode, tend to think. But what counts is that we share the same background picture. Well, it's got to do with what he did or she did being caused by his or her reasons, the motives that they had for doing it. Never mind how they got the motives. Let's put that aside for the moment. And that's why there's, most people are prepared, for instance, to blame. Well, I won't go into particular cases. Anyway, blame a lot of Nazis. Right?
Well, we can say that a serial killer killed a bunch of people. We don't have to go back to the fact that the serial killer grew up in some weird environment.
That's right.
That got him to
very good. That's exactly right. Except there are extreme cases where we're prepared to go, yeah, and that's okay too. That's not a criticism. Again, that's exactly my view. Suggests that there will be cases where they're sufficiently extreme that we don't think the person is really responsible in the right way for his actions, because they weren't responsible, because somehow there was this external force.
Brain tumor.
Well, that's yet a different case. There was this external force with respect to their beliefs and desires that molded their beliefs and desires in ways over which they had no control.
Soldiers are supposed to refuse orders that are illegal.
Right.
What if a system doesn't know what's legal or not?
Well, no, that part's, you're getting it close to what, I mean, that part's in one sense easy, I'm going to claim, waving my hand over lots of technical difficulties, by the way. And that is, so there you can imagine, I don't like this answer, but I'm going to, this is not the last word, but it's the first word. There you can imagine literally knowledge engineering the military code into the system. So the system does, in some relevant sense, know. Now, there are always questions for any legal code about specific application. Knowing the code is, hey, but knowing, how reasonably, that doesn't mean always correctly, but how reasonably to apply it. That's the tricky bit in that. Anyway. Okay, so the Pentagon, yeah, no, I know. I don't, I mean, people can leave, anybody can leave, it's all right. So the Pentagon agrees with my view. Because it's just, what else could they think? This is just literally, this bit is literally common sense, right? An autonomous system must have the capability to independently compose and select among different courses of action to accomplish goals based on its knowledge and understanding of the world. That's decision theory in a kind of crude form.
Chess program also.
I don't care about chess programs. I'm not saying they're not intelligent. I'm not even saying they're not, they certainly are intelligent. I'm not even saying they're not autonomous. It's just not very interesting, to be honest. I mean,
how would you discipline these critters?
Well, no, we're getting, we're getting there. I just want to set this up. I want to set this up.
Military code
Okay,
has discipline
so
built into it.
another way to think about the issue that I've been pressing you on is to think about, and this has come up, think about cases where we don't hold an agent, an adult. So there were the cases, there were little kids, there are animals. We don't usually, I mean.
Well, we do kill dogs that do bad things.
That's, again, irrelevant. Yes, we do. But yes, we do. But so what?
Well, we must be holding them responsible.
Oh, no. So you got to watch out for the difference between causal responsibility and moral responsibility. We typically do not hold dogs. So we sometimes hold their owners morally responsible, as we should, and legally responsible. In most states, it's what's called strict liability. You're strictly liable for the bad things your dog does. But we don't hold them morally responsible. Why? Well, kind of, because we don't think that, yes, they have beliefs, they certainly have beliefs, and they have desires, but somehow we think they're not responsible for the way those are put together in the way that people are. I don't know. That's, again, notice I have no idea about what goes on literally in the human brain. This is all about the human mind at some level of abstraction. I don't know how we do it. I don't know how it happens. But anyway.
I mean, this conversation certainly makes sense in this culture when you're talking about the responsibility of the agent for beliefs that caused action. But there are cultures that would say, they wouldn't think that. I mean, they would immediately think how the community failed an agent. And so the question of responsibility of an individual agent wouldn't even arise.
So
I'm just saying that
my sense is that's a myth. No, so my sense is that's pure myth, although I do not think it's pure myth that there are societies and cultures which are much more ready and much more open to making, to allocating significant responsibility to the society. It's not the same as what you said, though. I don't think, I simply do not believe that there are any cultures in which the notion of individual responsibility is completely absent.
That's understandable. I'm just saying that this conversation, with the fervor that it is, makes perfect sense in the culture that it's taking place.
Well, okay, I'll take that as agreement, because this is the culture in which it's taking place. So, okay. So, as I say, we do the. My favorite case, I mean, there are all these cases you can look at, my favorite case is from Law and Order. I like the Twinkie case. It's not too different from the Law and Order case. Happily, that defense failed. I mean, the Twinkie defense failed. I don't know how many of you even know what this is all about, the Twinkie defense.
No, didn't what's his name get off?
Oh, no, but not because of the Twinkie defense.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it wasn't, I mean, he didn't get off. God, what did happen? He didn't get off.
The guy who killed Harvey Milk.
Yeah, and George Moscone.
Okay. He claimed diminished capacity in part because his brain was screwed up for having eaten Twinkies.
Yes, that part of the defense, I think, failed. But I can't remember the outcome. But that's why I like the Law and Order case, because someone look it up, because it's fictional, I remember. I mean, so all the details are in the story. Anyway, so there's this great Law and Order case. The main character, non-recurring character, is this brilliant scientist. I don't know I can't remember what his science was supposed to be. It's a brilliant scientist who's also seriously bipolar. I'm not quite sure that's the right, anyway. I'm not quite sure that's the right way to put it. Anyway. But he's on meds, and as long as he's on meds, he's groovy, he's fine. But the meds dampen his creativity and they dampen his emotions in general, but they dampen his creativity. He knows, because he's very smart, he's a scientist. Anyway, he knows that if he goes off his meds, there's a good chance. I mean, there are various things that could happen, among which is that he will get crazy hyper Nietzsche-style Superman and kill somebody. I mean, I don't know if he thinks literally he could, but he knows that there's a real chance that he could go really bad and go violent. He goes off his meds precisely because he wants to feel, anyway, more fully alive or something. He goes off his meds, kills a woman, is apprehended, tried. His defense, he's either his own defense lawyer or because he's a scientist, he's brilliant. Anyway, he's either his own defense lawyer or he plays plays a significant role, as one is supposed to anyway, in one's own defense. And the defense is essential, so it's not guilty by reason of temporary insanity. And there's no doubt, I'm going to stipulate, there's no doubt that he was temporarily insane. He was insane, whatever, when he killed the woman. But the prosecution argues, well, yes, but he knowingly and willfully put himself in that state, knowing even the possibility that things could really go badly south for somebody else, never mind him. And he was found guilty, as he should have been. But, you know, I'm not, I mean,
it's sort of like someone who drinks and drives. But
yes.
when they're driving, they're
yes, they're not, right.
They can't possibly
right.
stay on the road because
yes.
they're too drunk.
Yes, this is just a more, I agree, by the way. I agree. This is a more complicated, because it was a good Law and Order. I like it. Anyway, so, okay, so the picture is, again, this is the same picture. I'm doing it now from the when we don't apply it, right? Is, you know, when the agent isn't fully capable of generating or maintaining or something or changing its own beliefs and preferences, that isn't, it in some sense isn't in full control of its own rational motivation. And I say that even though I'm granting that in general it's not so clear the extent to which we are literally in control of what we believe or desire. That's a complicated story. But these cases are like extreme. It's like, oh, he's, you know.
It assumes a certain model of human behavior.
It does.
You could assume, postulate a slightly different one, which is that your utility maximization and whatever suggests a course of action. But you have separately a moral sense that acts like a monitor and either lets it through or doesn't.
Yeah.
And, you know, you
so
quite a different...
No, I agree. The standard picture, and here, by the way, this is complicated. So the classical picture, which I don't buy, although I begin there. I keep saying that because it's a good place to begin. That's my view. The classical picture, it says such moral considerations are built into your utilities or your preferences. My view is it's a little more, I think that's kind of right but wrong. So my picture is somewhat more complicated. I don't want to get into all this stuff. But my picture is that it's extremely important to think about preferences over preferences, second order preferences. So there are simple cases where, like, so let's say you prefer chocolate ice cream to, as do I, chocolate ice cream to vanilla ice cream. And you read some stuff, and I don't know if this is, I'm making this up because they change, you know, but maybe not, because doctors come out every 15 seconds with, this is good for you, that's not so good for you. No, that's good for you now. So you kind of become convinced that chocolate ice cream is really much less good for you than vanilla ice cream. So you'd like to change your preferences. You'd prefer vanilla ice cream over chocolate ice cream. And there are things you can do. How successful they are is a complicated story. Depends, who the hell knows. I think of moral constraints. Again, I'm not talking about, this is not ethics, this is psychology. Literally, it's a theory of human motivation. I think of moral constraints largely on the basis in the model of second order preferences.
Well, you may or you may not be right there. I tend to think we have
a separate.
Independent. But we also need to talk about how do we build machines.
Yes.
And when we build safety critical,
my view is,
yes,
no.
Acts independently of the
yes.
decision process. And you could do the same by making that monitor.
Yes, no, you could. I agree.
Ethical as well as
very good. Very good. This is the kind of issue that in the end, so remember, I'm not talking about technical issues here at all. But you'll see. I'll see what I'll say in the end. I mean, we'll get to something like that. Okay, so back to the issue in hand. You might say, finally, no, I've been there all the time. Okay, so I'm going to stipulate, or if you like predict, depending on what you think, that we will very soon, and I think we already are, by the way, but be dealing with sufficiently autonomous, highly capable, and highly intelligent artificial systems. And now I'm talking, yes, about autonomous weapons. That is, weapons that will be allowed to be more autonomous than they now are, and not unreasonably allowed. Remember, that is my picture. And that I expect U.S. military doctrine to change in precise ways. I disagree with my guest over there. I think they will aim for very precise exceptions, and people often, there are often quite precise exceptions to lots of rules. It doesn't mean they're broken hither, willy-nilly, just false as a matter of actual fact, I think. But okay. So then how should we think about these ethical, and again, with respect to creatures that we design? Exactly. Okay. My favorite, now I have an analogy, and it's kids. Now we don't design kids, actually, but, kind of a little with respect to some aspects of their personality. We don't design, I know, any parent realizes, no, you don't design them, but, something. So here's my analogy. This is a way to start thinking about this issue that doesn't rely on any special stuff from like the brain sciences, which my own view is are not likely to be of much help in this regard. That's okay. So this is everybody know who Robert Allen Zimmerman is? Bob Dylan. Damn straight. The most recent Nobel Prize winner, although this year's Nobel Prize winners will be announced soon. Have they? Hold it. No, so who's the new Nobel Prize winner in literature? Have they? Oh, yes! Yeah, of course, of course. The Remains of the Day guy. That's right, they have been announced. I forgot. I knew and forgot. Okay, anyway, so there you go. May you grow up to be righteous. May you grow up to be true. May you always know the truth. I mean, you can't really always know the truth, but anyway. And see the light surrounding you. That one I don't know. May you always be courageous, stand upright, and be strong. May you stay forever young, or young, as it might have been. Okay, so I do think a good way to begin thinking about these issues, the issues that we finally got to, about, okay, you got these autonomous agents that are going to be large, that are in some circumstances going to be outside our control, either on purposefully let, or just by necessity, just, they're outside our control. And again, not just weapons, I mean quite generally here. Making decisions and doing things which will have significant ethical consequences. I mean, just like most of what we do in our lives doesn't have significant ethical consequences, right? Let's face it, mostly what we do is just, who cares? I mean, it's got consequences and, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, really, there's like, you don't apply ethical considerations. And that'll be true for them a lot, because, but, okay. Okay, so here's the picture. So that's kind of the picture. That is, think about them. Think about how we try to bring up our kids. I'm stipulating here. How we try to bring up our kids to be courageous and whatever those good and blah, blah, blah. I mean, notice, and this gets back to the point that she made at the end of the table, although I disagreed with the claim about, but the specific claim she made about other cultures, I agree with the claim about other cultures in general. That is, yes, this is going to be by our own lights. I mean, that is, we socialize our kids, or try to. We usually fail to some extent, but into what? Into our society. Whatever that means. I mean, there's a question about what's our society. I mean, anyway.
And
But
we don't get to override their decisions after a certain point.
and well, I said that in the earlier slide. Yeah, once they're 18, roughly legally, they're anyway.
So if we use the analysis you had initially, that we should not use a weapon whose consequences we're not fully capable of understanding. Like we have to look around the corner, right?
Hold it. I didn't say the should stuff. We should. I didn't say anything like that. We should not use a weapon that.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, until my autonomous shotgun reaches the mental age of majority.
Yes, that's right.
Means it doesn't do anything.
No. Kids do lots of things. No. But that is the picture. That is. Again, if you're thinking about autonomous weapons in particular, I think this is true for autonomous cars, really autonomous cars. I don't mean you have to wait until they're 18. Honest, that's not the picture. But if we take this stuff, if we take this seriously, yes, we should. And this raises all these, in the end, I think very difficult technical issues about how to design and build these things so that we can do the best we can do, which is all we can do, the best we can do to see to it that when they have to make judgments with significant moral consequences, that they will make pretty good judgments, I mean, as you'll see. So, boom. So how do we bring up our robots to be mostly good? Well, again, it's not as if I have an answer for this in detail. I don't, actually, at all. But the picture is, yeah, you should think about, so that's why I have like basic training, right? So in basic training, soldiers in the U.S. military don't just learn how to shoot and climb things. They're given lessons. I'm not saying how successful this is. That's a separate issue. But they're given lessons on the laws of war, the various conventions, blah, 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 blah. After basic training, when they're actually about to do something, they're told about the rules of engagement. So yeah, I mean like that. And the same goes for the rules of the road, etc. That is just, I'm oddly not kidding. That is, you want to try and teach these beasties that they're going to have significant power and in that sense, well, I'll say significant power. You're going to want to try and teach them to use their power well, knowing that just like with your kids, literally, there is no guarantee that you'll succeed, or that once they get out there on their own, that they won't significantly change in relevant ways, because it's life.
And some might. And some might significantly change, as people do in real life as well.
Some
might change significantly once they get out and.
Some mice.
As people do, some kids get.
Yeah, I don't know much about mice, but the thing is.
Some might.
Oh, might. Oh yes, no, I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay, that's exactly right. I mean, that's what happens with kids. It's what's going to happen with these robots.
Teaching requires punishment and reinforcement.
No, it doesn't require. Doesn't require punishment.
Or
I don't think.
It requires a correction of some kind.
Yeah, it requires.
Skinner learning.
Well, no, it doesn't require. That's a very specific theory, which I mean, but no, it does require supervision. This is something that it does. Well, does it even require supervision is a complicated issue. I'm going to say yes. It requires supervision, and where the supervision is almost surely going to include things like bad robot, or no, that's not a cat video. I mean, think about it.
Or you can reprogram them.
It's just learning. It's machine learning.
Well, no. So this is no. So now this is a point that Ulf raised, though he's now gone. So my picture again. I'm now going beyond my remit. So I think training these critters in general anyway, actually, if they're going to be operating, again, with multiple tasks, so not a single task, if they're going to be operating in multiple and largely unpredictable tasks, where they will have to generate new task specifications for themselves in an open environment that's largely unpredictable, then to get them to be the best they can be, as they say in the Army recruiting ads, is going to require an ensemble of methods from from essentially old-fashioned knowledge engineering, just stick it in the thing's brain, not unalterably, but at least at first, stick it in the thing's brain, all the way to all kinds of machine learning
So I
things.
think the point is you've got the one set of training and learning and whatever to make it do what you want it to do. And independently, you've got the same stuff going on for moral judgment. As you say, you can program in the rules of law, rules of war.
Yeah.
And that's quite a different activity than programming in, how to fight. This one might use that one, but at some point you're going to have a sanction that's
Well, again,
driven by the second
so
one.
you've got, I'm not going to argue against, honest, I'm not arguing against that. By my lights, that's a specific design decision.
It's a pretty good one, I think.
I'm absolutely not denying that. So this is like the kind of the 3 laws of robotics picture, or I don't know if you've seen Oren Etzioni, who's a AI researcher, has these, I forget what he calls them, the 3 somethings. Yeah, to replace the 3 laws of robotics. Anyway, the 3 somethings of something.
You know what that got the robots into in Asimov's book?
I hate science fiction. I've never read Asimov.
Completely backfired.
I've never read it. No, that's just it. Part of this is something you have to realize. General laws, general rules can be, I'm all for them, but what matters is how they're applied. Right? And you can't, this is a famous old story, you can't predetermine all the possible application problems.
Absolutely.
So the thing is going to have to, so it's got these laws. In the end, it's going to have to figure out, oh shit, I got this law, but how do I apply it here?
Exclusively in the generative process, generating behavior, or do you use them possibly separately?
No, but either way, no, I don't think that, I'm not sure that makes a difference to what, in the end, you've got to apply rules.
You can apply them more purely if you have a secondary system. It doesn't have to figure out
Oh,
how
I see
to
what you're saying.
generate behavior.
No, this, right, I'm sorry. Okay. No. So as I say, this is, I do think, as I say, hold it, what do I say? No, boom, 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 boom. So, as I say somewhere, I think. I think there are going to be an enormous number of specific, hard, technical challenges to following this stupid, simple-minded thing. Think of your robots as like your kids. That really is a pretty stupid, simple-minded thing. On the whole, I think it's not a bad idea, actually, despite that. So, there are going to be lots of technical challenges, some very detailed. So, for instance, blah, 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 the logic of obligation. If you think about hand coding this, anything like this, you get into all these issues in deontological logic. Really? But yeah, maybe. So, but there are also going to be higher level, also technical challenges. Not quite so technical, but technical. Like this difference of opinion between you and me, for instance, generates, there are different pictures here about whether you think this can all be handled, broadly speaking, in some sense, in a single overarching, essentially decision theoretic system with extra bells and whistles, which themselves raise technical complications of the first kind, actually. Preferences over end up being technically detailed, hard things to think about. Or should you go this separate monitor, thing? I'm not,
So David,
I'm retired, as I said. It says here.
There's another way of saying what you're saying, which I don't think comes to the same conclusion that you're coming to.
Could
so
be.
At any rate, if we are to treat these things like our children, then the way we treat our children is that we don't let them go to war or to put themselves in any other kind of significant ethical places until they've reached a certain stage.
No, but that's...
And that stage, hold on,
yeah,
let me finish. That stage is where they can actually, in another frame, be able to defend themselves in court.
Well, so I don't like that. I'm completely with you.
That's as complicated as one that can turn around and defend what it did in court.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, yeah, they're good.
No, I'm completely with you until that stuff about defending oneself in court. Remember the famous line. Only what is the line? Only an idiot has himself for a lawyer, something like that. Yeah. So it's not. That's just wildly unrealistic.
Everybody's saying is explainable AI.
No, that's a different issue. I agree. Yeah. No, but the general picture.
I understand that defending myself in court doesn't mean being my lawyer, but there is stuff in our legal system that says until you're a certain age, we treat you differently because you just aren't really.
I had this. That's in there. No, but that's what I said earlier.
I'm not telling you anything. I'm trying to repeat back to you what I'm hearing you say.
No, that's absolutely right. That's why I think that as we move, again, the car case is, I think, actually an oddly simple case. I know people don't, but I actually think, I don't mean literally the technical complications of getting the damn thing to go on, but I mean ethically, I think it's not an interesting case. I think there are interesting cases already, unfortunately, upon us with respect to judgments of, for instance, what the hell's the right word? I can't think of the right word. Anyway, for liability, but also for getting bail. Right. So there are already, unfortunately, significant decisions being made without. Here I don't know the facts, of course. I'd be surprised if every one of those decisions has a well-trained human monitor. So if you think about the stock case I do know a little bit about. It's unimaginable. Literally impossible for humans to monitor the trades. The amount of trade, just the speed, it's unimaginable. On the other hand, humans do set the various criterion thresholds and blah, 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 and they just, let's hope. And there have been the two famous cases in which things have gone screwy and caused humongous stock market dives. But yes, so the thing is, I think the more consequential the decisions and actions of these largely autonomous systems are, the more consequential they are. That was a bad way of putting it. Anyway, but the more consequential they are, the more important it is that we, the public, literally, the public, demand that they show themselves, as it were, or they be vetted along various, broadly speaking, ethical dimensions. And until they pass whatever the tests are, I'm not saying what the tests should be, that's a separate issue. Whatever the tests are, then until then, we shouldn't let them loose. That is my picture. That is my picture. And of course, it won't take 18 years. I'm hoping. Well, maybe I shouldn't hope that it won't take 18 years. I'm assuming it won't take 18 years from the time we build a robot. Literally, anyway, for it to. Oh, okay. Now it's because, we'll we have enormous advantages over Mother Nature in certain respects. So we should take advantage of them and get these things out quicker. But get them out with some confidence. Again, we cannot, this is not like guaranteeing, with some confidence that when let loose in the wild, they'll kind of do the right thing mostly, because that's all you can hope for. It's the best you can hope for.
You don't have a condition where the robots are doing nothing and then they're doing everything. There's a layer of decision making.
There's training. That's why there's training.
That's not the point that I'm making. It's a good point. It's a different point. The point I'm making is that you don't have the condition where first there's the machines, we'll put it as the machines because it may not be robots.
Yeah.
Are acting not at all, and then they can do whatever they want.
No, that,
So
yeah. Just like with kids.
In the medical context, we have an institutional review board.
Yeah.
Who sits around and says, in this very particular case, in this very particular circumstance, we won't allow this particular activity or this particular study to go on. So here, I would anticipate that while the military is drafting rules of engagement for particular conflicts, and they have a procedure for doing this, they will incorporate whether autonomous systems are allowed in a particular way, in a particular situation, according to their rules of engagement.
Yes.
And what the people who build these systems should do is anticipate the process by which these rules of engagement are created and make sure that they're appropriate to the technology. Because it's not just going to be the technology that's making the decision at the moment, it's also going to be people deciding when to deploy the technology, how much, and how to deploy it.
Yeah, so I think, again, it's one of these cases where I'm with you, and then at the end you go off the tracks. That's my picture. That is what you want. I mean, the way you put it, I think my guess is it was literally the way you put it as opposed to what you were actually thinking. So my picture is that, there are some things, again, thinking about robot soldiers. I mean, it's a special case, although an important one. So there are certain relatively unchanging, I don't mean they never change, but they're relatively unchanging rules and laws and blah, blah, blah. And then there are things that change from conflict to conflict, not randomly, but, change from like the rules of engagement, especially even within specific areas within a larger conflict. There'll be different rules of engagement Now, there's no chance, again, I'm going to say this, there's no chance really of anticipating all of those contingencies. Forget about it. Not going to happen. So you can build in, I will say, you can build in some discipline under the standing rules, because however you do that, however you do that. What you want to build in is the capacity to learn, to adapt to the new rules of engagement, to know which rules of engagement are applicable to you. I'm talking, you're a robot now, right? Or you're a human, by the way. It's all the same in this respect. He says that if they're robots, we have to build them so that they can know which are the relevant rules of engagement. And it might be the case, by the way, I don't know how often, I literally don't know how often this happens, but it would happen. It could be the case that, again, within the same overall war, a given robot might move from one set of rules of engagement to another, because they're just, da, da, da.
You give a soldier rules
so they have to.
Those are the rules that they're supposed to follow.
No, but as
How
I'm.
they're arrived at ethically is a different question.
No, that's
Not entirely. They're
no, I agree, and that's the same. So I'm not talking about robot commanders in chief or even robot generals. This is robot. That's right. They take their orders, including the rules of engagement. All I'm saying is you can't build a thing in advance. I mean, you have to build the thing so that it can take on, learn, and adapt to, accommodate to these new rules of engagement, which you couldn't possibly, which you, the designer, not the robot, the robot too, couldn't possibly foresee. I mean, couldn't possibly foresee. And that's just like people. I agree. That was, again, my weird bottom line about this, which is why I say, oh, here it is, which is why I say what I said at the very beginning. It doesn't matter that I know nothing about ethics or robotics. I'm just a I'm a citizen, kind of, I guess. But anyway, I'm just a regular Joe. I don't see any need for a special discipline of RoboEthics. I don't see any need for it. I don't think there are any ethical problems. Literally, I don't think there are any ethical problems, either, as I say, substantive or what's called meta-ethical, doesn't matter what that is, that are unique to robots or to artificial systems in general. The one thing, so that's why I think, just think of them as like people, except the natural analogy, I think, is like kids. Again, not really like real kids, but like kids. You got to teach them stuff and hope they learn.
I anticipate them being able to do things that we can't do.
Oh, yes.
And so
That's,
we will arrive in circumstances
that's all
that
true.
have not been analyzed ethically up till now. It may be that some of the same.
But that's true of our children.
But they're also generally considered more expendable than people.
No, I'm not.
And therefore it changes the risk calculus when we decide.
No, that's about how to use them.
Well, yeah.
But I'm not addressing. I'm not addressing.
Something that plainly needs to be studied.
I'm not addressing that issue. But except in one way. So this last bit, which will be my last bit, by the way. So when we think about autonomous agents, again, in this kind of informal, which is the way no one should kid you that this is I can formalize autonomous. When we think about autonomous agents in the way that we do, think about ourselves and other, at least adult human beings who are more or less normal functioning. Anyway, so those are moral agents. That is, some of the things they do, not most of the things they do, are not worth moral consideration of any kind. But some of the things they do are, and we do. Bad boy, good girl. We are also moral patients. That is, other moral agents have to take us into consideration. Now, there are lots of moral patients which are not moral agents. So many people think about the earth, literally, as a moral patient. That is, it's a thing whose welfare we have to take into account. It's not a moral agent. It does what it does. It's just the laws of nature. I mean, it doesn't make any decisions. It just does what it does. But trees, and of course dogs. So my view is dogs are not moral agents. But we have to you can't just go around torturing dogs. Cats is a different thing. That's okay. Dogs, no. Now, the one thing I think that's literally new because of robots, in this regard, I mean, lots of stuff that's new. The stuff that's with respect to morality or ethics is new, is that robots could be the first entities in the universe that are moral agents, because that's my view. The more autonomous they are, to the extent to which they're autonomous, they're eo ipso, as they say in Latin, ipso facto, as they say in yet more Latin. They're moral agents. That's my view. But they're not moral patients.
I mean, you don't consider their rights.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah. It's okay to abuse your robot. You might not get away. That's a different issue. It might kill you, but that's a separate thing. but yeah, so I'm not sure about that, to be honest, but that's my sense, is that we don't have to think, and shouldn't, unless we shouldn't, I think, think of robots and,